Hello. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with this presentation. This is going to be how to write a essay about leadership, how to write a Common App essay about leadership, which is a pretty common topic for the Common App essay. Just as a reminder, this is the last presentation in our series. We had two others earlier. If you didn't happen to watch those, the one last week was on how to write a Common App essay about accomplishments. Such as something like a passion project or something involving a competition, some things to be aware of in that type of presentation. And then the first one we did in the series was how to write a Common App essay about sports. So if you're interested in either of those, feel free to let me know. I'll go ahead and send you a recording. We're recording this one as well. I'll be happy to send it along to anyone who wasn't able to make it. So we got a small crowd here today. That's all right, all good. We're just gonna go ahead and jump right on in. And yeah, if you have any questions, let me know at the end. You could just drop them in chat, drop them in Q&A. So we'll go ahead and get started. So how to write a Common App essay about leadership? Like I was saying, this is a pretty common thing that students tend to write about leadership experiences. And the first thing to think about is picking the activity. It is important to consider leadership very broadly. You do not need to be the president or founder of a club to write an effective leadership essay. In fact, sometimes the less common considerations and definitions of leadership can make for more compelling essays. So even if you're not officially the team captain or the first chair or the vice president, if you've acted as a leader or as a mentor, or if you've acted to overcome obstacles or tensions or conflicts, then perhaps you actually do have leadership experience. So unofficial leadership positions, that works. That totally works for Common App essay. Um, some other examples of kind of unconventional leadership experiences. We had an essay that I asked students, or I sent a sample of, I think for my sports presentation, was a girl talking about her martial arts dojo. I don't remember exactly whether it was Taekwondo or a different kind of martial arts, but the student wrote about how there wasn't an official teacher. There wasn't like an official coach of that. And it was only really a problem at competitions where they were disqualified from competitions because they didn't technically have a teacher. So she stepped up and became that teacher. So kind of an unconventional teaching experience. Another unconventional kind of leadership essay that I've seen a couple years ago, a student wrote about her tennis team. I think it was tennis, and her tennis coach got fired halfway in the middle of the season. And she didn't become the next tennis coach, so she didn't really step up there. But she stepped up as a teammate. She stepped up to make sure that the team kind of stayed together, that the team kind of had still was cohesive and still had some harmony and some teamwork between them. So she really kind of stepped up as an unofficial leader there. And sometimes leadership happens in a family or at work or on the sidelines during practice, right? Are you asked to take care of a younger sibling or a younger niece or nephew? Are you a leader at home or in the family? Are you a leader at work? Maybe you're not the manager, but you help train new hires, right? Now, anything like this could work for a leadership essay. They don't necessarily have to have a fancy title. And in fact, I would encourage you not to worry too much about the fancy title. It is more powerful of an essay. It would be a more powerful essay to reflect on a leadership contribution that was not connected to a title, that was not connected to an official leadership title, but where you learn something important, right? So if you have one experience where you're the vice president, but it hasn't really impacted you, and you have another experience where you don't have an official leadership title, but you feel like it's been really impactful for your story and for your journey, then I would actually encourage you to go with that second route, right? I would encourage you to talk about the experience that's the most impactful and that's meant the most to you. We want to talk about an experience that is important to you and that we can connect to an overall theme or an overall story, right? Like with every Common App essay, we need a story, some way that you've changed, some way that you've grown. So there's a couple different types of common personal stories for this type of essay. The first one is leading a community project. You could write about a time when you took the initiative to create or lead a community project, such as organizing a neighborhood cleanup or starting a tutoring program or anything like that. End by reflecting on the impact the project has had both on you and your community. That's a very strong storyline. You can talk about making the community a better place and how that's been important in your life. Another common storyline with leadership is mentoring or any kind of tutoring. That's always very strong. If you have any kind of mentoring or tutoring experience, you can explain the qualities that you demonstrated in your mentorship and how you helped the person that you're mentoring kind of grow and change, and maybe how you've grown and how you've changed as a mentor or as a tutor. Leadership in music, sports, and robotics, there's a lot of room there for potential storylines. So that's always a very strong option as well for leadership essay. Overcoming adversity in a leadership role. Sometimes students are put in situations where they have to face a pretty significant challenge as a leader, and it could be effective to write about that challenge, to write about what happened and what you had to overcome as a leader, and how you did that and what you learned from the experience. And finally, any unconventional forms of leadership, really don't limit yourself to structured roles or titles, right? If you're a vice president of an organization, that's great. But if it doesn't mean that much to you, and if it hasn't really impacted your life, then maybe I would focus on something else, focus on something unconventional, maybe something that doesn't have an official leadership title, but where you've experienced or expressed leadership skills. So there's a couple things that we need, whatever decision or whatever activity you decide to focus on, we need a couple of things with a leadership essay. Number one, we need to see an obstacle. That's true with every Common App essay. It's true for this one. We need some sort of obstacle that you overcome. Number two, we need to see who you are as a person, right? We need to see your personality, your voice, your values, your worldview, whatever. We need to see who you are as a person, what's important to you. And finally, we need to see some sort of change, some sort of transformation. This is true generally for every single Common App essay, but it's also true for this one as well with leadership. So we need to see an obstacle, like I was saying. Every Common App essay needs an obstacle. We need a little bit of tension, a little bit of friction. It shouldn't be just a success story. It shouldn't be, I've always been a leader, and then I took on more leadership positions, and now I'm an even better leader, right? There's no tension there. There's no friction. We need something that you have to overcome, something that you have to maybe struggle with a little bit. And the second thing about your obstacles, I think it's best if we talk about an internal obstacle, right? An external obstacle, that's okay. That might be something like a fight if you're talking about robotics, a fight amongst robotics teammates, or if you're talking about founding a nonprofit, difficulties creating the nonprofit or getting it off the ground. But I think it's even better if we can talk about an internal obstacle that you had to overcome to become a better leader. For instance, perhaps you used to get easily frustrated as a leader, but you had a humbling experience that allowed you to see others' perspectives. So you kind of overcame that frustration, and now you're more empathetic. Um, or maybe you used to struggle with micromanaging your peers and kind of getting in the way of other people's tasks, and kind of trying to do everybody's role at once. And then you learn to slow down and to trust others, right? So what internal obstacles did you face as a leader, and how did you overcome those? And we want to show us these obstacles, right? With every Common App essay, we want to show rather than tell. Don't just tell me what happened. Show me an example of that. What's an example? What exactly happened? What was said? So number one, we need an obstacle. Number two, we need personality, voice, values. We need to see who you are as a person. Colleges want to see who you are, your personality, and your values. Being a leader is great, but they also want to see who you are just as a normal person, right? What's important to you? What values do you hold dear, etc. So these values in this essay, in the leadership essay, you could express the values of the ability to motivate others. That could work. Personal integrity. That's always really that's a good one. Like what's important to you, what matters to you. Courage, the courage to take risks, to not be afraid of failing, to not be afraid of something going wrong, and to take risks and to get out of your comfort zone. Courage. Sorry, I just said that. Courage. Empathy. Empathy, being able to see other people's perspectives, being able to empathize with others, and caring a lot about your community. That could also be a very strong Common App essay. Persistence and grit, right? How have you overcome challenges? Were there any challenges that made you want to quit and you didn't? You pulled yourself up by your bootstraps, and you kind of persevered through that. Persistence and grit, it's always really good. Placing a value on relationship with team members. Like I was saying, we want to see who you are as a person. And if you're a person who cares about your friends and cares about your team members and your peers, that's great. Colleges love that, right? Uh, what are some examples of you caring for your teammates? What are some examples of you going above and beyond as a friend, right? Prioritizing the larger good over any individual, and then prioritizing group harmony over awards. I think that's a nice essay topic as well. Some students will write about how maybe they're the team captain and they used to only focus on very kind of ruthless winning the game. They want to win the game. They want to win the championship. They want to win the tournaments, whatever. And maybe they realize that they're actually pushing their teammates too hard, and they need to value harmony. They need to value coming together and learning as a group. They need to value um, the process, the group harmony, the larger good of the group, rather than the outcome or the awards. Any of these kind of themes or messages or personal values would be really good in a Common App essay to explore. So number one, we need an obstacle. What was something you struggled with? How did you overcome it? Number two, we need to see who you are as a person. What do you hold dear? What do you value? And then number three, we need to see how you've changed. How have you transformed from this experience to become a new person or to take on a new personality or new perspective? Every Common App essay needs a personal transformation. How is the you at the beginning of the essay different than the you at the end of the essay? For this essay, I think we have a couple of different options to show how you've changed. Number one, perhaps taking on a leadership experience impacted your life, right? Maybe you really struggled with public speaking. You took on a leadership experience that maybe you kind of were pushed into. You got pushed into a leadership experience, and now you're no longer afraid of public speaking. Right now, you're much more outgoing. You're much more confident. You take risks. You go out there. You make friends. You talk to people. You talk to strangers. Right. So, how did the leadership experience impact you? Maybe it made you more confident. Maybe it made you more empathetic. Right. Maybe you used to get frustrated easily, and you kind of were a top-down leader, very straightforward. But then you realize that not everyone has the same learning style. Not everyone is as quick to the draw as you, and you need to have a little bit of empathy, right? You need to have a little bit of kind of understanding of other people's perspectives. Maybe you're less afraid of failing, right? Maybe you really kind of went out there and you broke out of your comfort zone as a leader, and now you're more comfortable doing that in other aspects of your life. So I think the first option, we need to see change no matter what. The first option is to talk about how the leadership experience impacted other aspects of your life, right? Like your confidence, so forth. The second option is to talk about how your approach to leadership itself changed. This is a very common essay that we see a lot, right? Where you talk about how at the beginning of your leadership experience, you had this one kind of approach to leadership, and then something happened where you realized you need to change or refine that approach. And now you have a different approach, right? So we have a little bit of a before and we have an after. We see who you were before as a leader and we see who you are now as a leader. With this story, I would try to avoid cliches. Simply becoming a better leader is too general, right? Tell me more. Like, what is a better leader? What does that mean? So, for example, maybe a good leader doesn't try to overstep their bounds, right? Maybe a good leader doesn't micromanage everyone and kind of tell everybody what their role exactly is. Maybe a good leader kind of sits back a little bit and lets people explore and lets people figure out what they're supposed to be doing and trust everybody and trust their teammates. Alternatively, maybe a good leader cares more about creating a cohesive, supportive environment than winning first place, right? Tell us that story. How did you come to care less about winning the tournament or winning the robotics competition and caring more about the process and about the teamwork and about, kind of coming together as a group? Maybe a good leader is selfless. Any of these options could work. We just, no matter what we do, we need to see a before and after of your leadership here, right? Give us an image of who you were before, give us an image of who you are now, and we need to see some change, right? Have you taken on a new perspective? Have you taken on a new personality? How have you changed? So, just to go back and to kind of recap here, with this essay about leadership, and again, this is true for all Common App essays, we need an obstacle, we need a little bit of tension, a little bit of friction. We need to see some personality. We need to see who you are as a person. What do you value? And then we need to see how you've changed. We need to see some personal growth, some personal development. There's also some things we want to avoid when writing about leadership. The first thing is resume hunting, right? Don't make it seem like you took on a leadership position just to include it in your resume. Now that might be true, maybe you did, and that's fine, right? But try not to make it seem like that. Try to make it, try to include a clear and genuine motivation for taking on this leadership role. Besides just wanting to take on a leadership role, why were you inspired to do this? Why were you inspired to become the vice president or to take on this leadership role? There's some options for this. Maybe sometimes the group is just in chaos. Everyone's fighting with each other, and you just realize that somebody needed to step up, so you'll step up. I've read a couple essays like that, and they tend to work well. The group is in chaos. There's not a strong leader. You decide somebody's got to do it, so I'll do it, and then now you're the leader. Sometimes students have a personal or kind of a family related connection to the issue, right? Maybe if it's in something in medicine or something in volunteer work that you have a really strong kind of personal tie to or a family tie to. Feel free to bring up that personal history and how that inspired you to join this organization or how it inspired you to step up and become a leader. Maybe you've always struggled with leadership or with speaking in public or with shyness, and you just wanted to give yourself a challenge. You wanted to really kind of push yourself, so you decided to volunteer for this leadership position. And finally, maybe you just wanted to make the community come together. That's another type of common essay we see with leadership is helping the community come together. Maybe that was important for you, and you kind of went out there and did that. So just make sure that it seems like you're genuinely interested in this leadership position. And the second thing we want to avoid is montage essays. I mentioned this last week, but we want to focus on one or two specific leadership roles and kind of one or two main themes. I've read a couple essays where it's like every paragraph's a new leadership experience, and it just tends not to work, right? Just tends not to work. The Common App essay, it's really a spot to slow down and to go in depth about a couple of things rather than trying to fit in a bunch of experiences. So I just encourage you to kind of slow down, to really go into depth about one or two main experiences. So that's pretty much all I have to say about leadership essays. You approach it like you would any other Common App essay. There's a couple of ways of thinking about it, though, and we have a couple of samples here, which we will go over. So this first Common App essay about leadership is, or I really like this essay. I think we get a really good image of the student. This essay is about them. It's a student in robotics. They're the captain of the team, and they used to approach robotics kind of informally. They used to have a really kind of informal approach. They wanted to be everyone's friends. They weren't very strict. He was very kind of easy to get along with, and that actually ended up backfiring. Where this one night they submit their robot to the competition, and the thing crashes into a wall and kind of explodes. Right, so something went wrong, and he realizes then that he needs to change his approach to leadership. He can still be everyone's friend. He can still be, easy to get along with and approachable, but he needs to create a sense of responsibility. He needs to start holding people accountable, for their contributions to the group and for their contributions to the project. So he starts changing his leadership approach. He starts using spreadsheets and kind of calling people out when they miss deadlines and et cetera. He changes his approach to leadership, and now it's much stronger. So this is a very strong leadership essay. I really like this one. Remember that we need to balance achievements with personality in these essays. I think we get a really good image of who this student is and like what's important to them. The essay, it reads very like humorous and kind of carefree. They say, or the student says, I looked at my teammates and sarcastically remarked, hey, you never know, maybe we'll qualify. Not like we can do any worse. Any worse, we might as well start building Lego robots with the elementary kids. So there's some comedy there. The scene of the robot colliding with the wall is pretty funny. So we get a good image of who the kid is. So, and that's one of the things we need for this essay is an image of who you are, what's important to you. And being approachable, being likable, being funny, it's important to the student. So it works well. For the Common App essay, it's all right to show a moment of weakness or a time when things didn't go exactly as planned. We get that here, right? The robot crashes into the wall and explodes, right? That's all right. That's totally good to write about in a Common App essay. How did you respond to that kind of failure? How did you respond to that moment? Good job providing specific examples of what his leadership style looked like. Remember, we want to show us what's going on. rather than just telling it to us, right? So he writes, I was sympathetic towards their excuses, and this eventually resulted in many missed deadlines. I delegated tasks, but I never checked on my teammates' progress, etc. Then he also talks about the robot, right, and how the robot exploded, and he gets negative points for robotics competition. So he doesn't just tell us that he was an informal leader. He shows us that he was an informal leader. He didn't follow up with missed deadlines. He didn't really demand too much or hold anyone accountable for missing deadlines. So showing us what's going on in these essays rather than telling it to us, that's always important as well. And then finally, we see clearly what his previous leadership style was and why it needed to change. So just remember, we need some transformation. We need some change in this essay. We see in this essay, we see a before and we see an after. Before, this leadership style avoided conflicts and created a fun environment, but then it did not translate to success. And then by the end of the essay, it's clear that he's changed, and he kind of is more on top of stuff and more responsible for managing expectations. I really like this last line in the conclusion. I could probably say that I failed as a captain that night, but I grew as a leader. My journey as captain has taught me the valuable balance between work and play. So it's clear that he's kind of grown from this experience. Really like this essay, and I think we get a good image of who the student is, both as a leader and just as a student. Seems like they're easy to get along with. The second essay about leadership is a student who this student had a ton of leadership experiences. They could have written an essay, and I think they may have. Some of the earlier drafts may have just been like each paragraph was a different leadership experience that they've had. And then we told her that it's better to go kind of into depth on one or two experiences. So she got rid of that and kind of focused on one experience, which I think worked well. But the general theme of this essay was that she, as a leader, used to be very kind of overly anxious about everything going wrong and kind of a little bit of a perfectionist, right? She micromanaged things a little bit too much, and worried about everything. And that started to affect her ability to enjoy. So she writes about when she organized this all night sleepover with her school, I think as part of a test thing. And she organized the whole thing. It was supposed to be fun, and then when she gets to the event, she was just worried the whole time about something going wrong. So she realizes that she needs to kind of relax a little bit as a leader and kind of let go of those reins of control. And she realizes this because of her dance team, right? In her dance team, she has to rely on her teammates and trust her teammates that her teammates will be there to catch her when she jumps and when she falls, etc. So she realizes that from the dance, her dance experiences helps her in this regard. So very strong essay. We see how these two storylines interact. I really like that. Um, like I was saying, the student had a ton of leadership experiences. It would have been easy for her to just focus on all of them and kind of create a montage essay. She decided not to, decided to focus on one or two things, which I think was very strong here. Every Common App essay needs an obstacle. In this essay, we get that sense of perfectionism and kind of trying to control everything, trying to control too much. I think that's strong as well. And finally, here we see an unusual connection with this essay, which I think works really well. She applies lessons she learned from dance to her leadership experience, which isn't necessarily the most common connection. So if you can make an uncommon connection, right, that's great. How has chess made you better at leadership? How has boxing made you better at leadership? How has soccer made you better at leadership, right? Any kind of unusual connections like that can be very strong for these essays. And then the final essay, which we'll kind of briefly talk about, was the student who wrote again about robotics and how the situation in the robotics team was that there wasn't really a leader, right? It was very kind of chaotic. People kind of did what they wanted to do. There wasn't like a kind of a clear way of organizing who was the leader, who was in charge, and this caused a lot of tensions. Eventually, they have some sort of disagreement about how to design or fix the robot, and this student quits robotics and then decides to come back to robotics, but like implement a style of leadership, which was very kind of democratic and focused on making the team kind of come together. Now, I think this is a strong essay. It does a good job. We see the students kind of prefer how the students approach the leadership change. We see what's it matters for them. So it's a good essay. I think it could have been improved in some areas as well. I think we get a little bit too negative and a little bit too caught up in kind of the drama in this essay, where he dismantled our robot, explaining that he started a less risky model. To say I was upset would be an understatement. Over the next few weeks, I found myself losing investment in the role of with the team, feeling the robot had been hijacked. Our teammates began cutting out of meetings, saying their work was useless. I couldn't say I didn't agree, and I didn't know how to lead them either. I think we just get a little bit lost in the drama there, and maybe that could have been shortened. But it's a strong essay. We see what the problem was, so there's a clear obstacle, and then we see how he overcomes that, which is he joins robotics back again a couple months later, and he implements a democratic style of leadership and kind of really forces everybody to have it. I really like this line, this whole paragraph. I'll read it. This is after he's joined back again and kind of changed how the organization is run. He says, that year, our robot did not win anything. Sure, I was disappointed, but as we attended competitions, I saw our team's bond strengthen, and we were finally having fun. I also took time studying the top teams, noting not only their robots' performances, but their teamwork. Were they open to experimentation? Were they all equally represented? How was their communication? Right. So I think that's a really strong essay. He didn't win that competition, but that's not the purpose, right? The purpose is kind of the teamwork. It's the process. It's getting there, coming together, and learning about those intangible things like communication, collaboration. So I really like this essay. I think they focus on that pretty well. I came to see my role above all as creating a supportive space where they could explore. Sometimes the younger team's members got off task and started playing around with parts. Understanding that I had yearned for this freedom, I allowed this before bringing them back to their work. Soon I learned patience and balance between strictness and play. So I think that's another great kind of paragraph. We get a good image of how his leadership style has changed. At the beginning, when he first joined robotics, everything was chaotic. He had to step up as a leader. And now we see him fully kind of embraced in that leadership role as a mentor, as somebody who can kind of create a supportive space where the teammates can explore, right? So I think that's a strong essay about leadership as well. So those are the three samples. If there's any questions, feel free to drop them in chat. If there's not any questions, then thank you for stopping by. I'll give a second for questions. I'll give a couple minutes if anyone has any questions. All right, sweet. I don't think we have any questions, which is great. If you do have any questions that you want to discuss privately, feel free to just email me. I'll be happy to respond to you individually. And if you want me to send a recording of this presentation, I'll definitely be happy to do so as well. Have a good one. This is the last presentation that we have scheduled as of the moment. There might be some more in the future, though, not entirely sure. If there are, I'll be sure to let you know. And I hope everyone has a good rest of their Wednesday. They stay cool. I know there's a heat wave coming. So have a good one, and thank you for showing up.